Another chapter of the Celtics-Sixers playoff rivalry is complete. The Celtics win this one in 7 in front of a raucous TD Garden crowd. So much to get into. Tatum's 51-point explosion. The Celtics lockdown team defense. Georges Niang is grabbing people's legs. Let's get into it next on First to the Floor.
Who's going to be first to the floor here? And it was Marcus Smart, as he usually is.
Brown drives.
That's not the first time we've seen a superstar in green and white sacrifice his body.
Welcome in to another episode of First to the Floor. Ben Vallis here. Thank you for joining us. Hope you're doing well. The Celtics, they get their 4 wins against Philly in the second round. I think we're all glad to see the end of the Sixers for this season at least, and potentially the end of the process forevermore. Joining us to talk all about it, Jackson Bauer. Jackson, how you doing, man?
I'm pretty good. I'm not going to lie. I feel good. I'm a little bit fried. I think we all a little bit sleep deprived living in this part of the world. But man, I'd do it 10 times over. What a morning.
Yeah, it was a 5:30 a.m. game here in Sydney time, if anyone's wondering. And also joining us for this one to pour over the series that was Jake Eisenberg. They did it, Jake. They did it. How you feeling, man?
Humbly, I'm one of the best basketball players in the world. Feeling pretty good, fellas.
I've heard.
Feeling pretty good.
Yeah.
So good. Such a relief that it's just done and we can move on. Doesn't matter how ugly it was. Doesn't matter that it took 7 games. Doesn't matter that we lost game 1 in our own house when Embiid wasn't even there. The Celtics win game 7, 112-88, closing out the series. Guys, Jackson, we'll start with you. Just your main takeaways from this game and how the Celtics were able to run away with it so convincingly.
All right. My main takeaways.
It
has been completely and utterly reaffirmed that we own Philadelphia. They're completely overrated. As much as I got nothing personal against Joel Embiid, he's a fake MVP. James Harden's a choker. I can talk all this shit now because we can. I love it. I don't know, man. There were so many positives to take away from it, and I'm sure we could probably bring ourselves back down to earth a little bit when we start looking ahead and whatnot. But hey, let's not worry about that now. Let's just enjoy the fact that we smashed the Sixers. Tatum's the man. I don't know, man. Enough takes there for you. Pardon me.
Yeah, but I understand the sentiment. Like I feel like I'm kind of all over the road emotionally with like just dealing with this series and the last couple of days and the fear heading into game 7. Like, can they do it? Or is the season rather going to end prematurely to the Sixers of all people? Jake, main takeaways from game 7.
My theory of the longer this series goes, the more that it favors the Celtics eventually became true. It just took a little bit longer than I thought. It took about until the 44-minute mark of game 6 for the Celtics to run them off the court. And that was it. This is not a perfect team. Jalen may forget to dribble at certain times. Marcus may take a disastrous shot here and there. Tatum may even turn into Dion Waiters from time to time.
Not untrue.
Less so these days.
But they will never go down because they are not together and because they are afraid of the bright lights. Like, they will come to play. They will fight. They will scrap. These guys have played so many games in the playoffs, so many big games. It's absolutely absurd. These young dudes, these under 30 guys, like these 3 dudes combined have more playoff games played than anyone else in the Eastern Conference pretty much. I'd have to run the numbers again, but I'm almost certain that they do. Harden maybe could tip them a little bit, but probably not when you add Allen there. These guys have played so many big games. It doesn't matter. Game 6, Tatum's having an off night. Who's going to pick it up? Marcus.
The maestro.
Maestro. And then today, MVP Tatum. Mother's Day Tatum.
That's a thing now, isn't it?
Yeah.
Brandy in the house.
Brandy in the house. Like, low-key, was she the MVP? Hard to say. Back-to-back
inspiration.
first team all NBA. And this is the guy that turned up. And we've been waiting kind of all year for the run. He's been fantastic all year long. But he hasn't had that like 6 to 8 week stretch where he literally is supernatural. And for 52 minutes now, he's been supernatural. We'll see if this can hold.
Yeah, I just didn't know if it was going to happen. Like, and I'm just so glad that it did. And in hindsight, like you're saying there, Jake, yes, these guys have been in and won so many big playoff games together in regular season games of large magnitude as well. And so, of course, now that they've done it and Tatum showed up at the end of the fourth quarter in Game 6, which I want to talk about a little bit later, because I think the miraculousness of that game is sort of magnified now by the fact that we somehow came out of the series alive. But yeah, Tatum waking up in the fourth quarter of Game 6 and just keeping it rolling all through this game is amazing. I do want to shout out the Celtics defense for like how they won this particular game, and I guess the series on a whole. But the defense on Embiid in isolation, in particular, like always sending a double, particularly in this game, from behind, and he's just not able to anticipate double teams that he can't see, which sounds silly, like, but to be an elite player, particularly to be an elite post player, like you do need that level of anticipation of knowing like the rhythm of teams sending doubles, especially with like that's the only way that teams can be successful doubling you. I thought the Celtics, whether it was Marcus Smart, whether it was Jaylen Brown, did an awesome job of sending unseen double teams at Joel Embiid at a time that really sort of put him off of his rhythm. And that was really part of the success beyond Tatum scoring in Game 7. I just want to quickly pause, like talking about guys who we weren't sure were going to show up. Joe has just joined the stream. New Zealand.
Yeah.
On the fly adjustment, a Missoula-like adjustment.
Absolutely.
Watch it reap success. Yeah.
He's coming in off the bench, jacking up some threes, getting us back in the game. Joe.
Don't tell Joe that he's Brogsy. He'll hate that.
Joe,
I feel like,
how you doing?
honestly, like the reason I'm joining, I just feel like I've been right about everything in this series. You guys might disagree.
Go on.
But for a start, the Celtics were dominant in their own way. The Celtics are the only team that can dominate a series and still only win 4-3. And here we are. But I felt good about today. I felt really good about today. I felt awful about the prospect of Miami. and here we are.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's just one thing I probably wasn't right about. Man, I tell you what, Tatum was just like, oh, man, you kind of got to pay that guy money, eh? Like, there's not many people that can actually just do that. You know,
I mean,
I have my sometimes issues with Tatum.
So glad to hear that, because that
Literally
hasn't always been Joe's sentiment.
Literally one guy has ever done what he did today, and it's Tatum.
Man, I tell you what, you know, those boys over in Philadelphia just wet the bed, and Tatum did not. He just, you know, like he just stood up in a way that none of them, like you just think about, it's the MVP of the NBA, right? And he's just sitting there,
Apparently.
Allegedly the NBA.
And the other guy on that team also won an MVP.
Yeah, and it's still supposed to be really good, you know. Is Jackson hinting at some voter fraud, some Dominion voting machines? Careful, Jackson, we might get sued.
You might say that Philadelphia MVP'd down their legs in this game.
MVP'd his pants. Yeah, great.
I want to get back quickly just to like how the Celtics won this game, and I know like Tatum obviously scored 51 points, but I really think we have to shout out the Celtics defense continually. So I talked about sending doubles to Embiid, you know, at the right time and kind of shuffling the doubles and where they were coming from and how they were coming to Embiid. On the Harden-Embiid pick and roll, we were giving Harden a lane to the bucket, right? Like similar to how the Sixers had been late switching on Tatum throughout the series, but we were giving Harden a long gander at the rim, and he was just not interested in it? Like, is that credit to the Celtics defense? Is that Harden just shitting the bed again in another playoff game? Or is it some sort of combination of the two where the defense is designed around the predictable bed shitting from Harden's perspective? What do you think, Jake?
I think it was 70% Harden MVPing down his leg and 30% the Celtics defense, because I think they go hand in hand. I think they were like, Harden, if you're going to be the one that goes for 40, we're going to make you do it all in the lane. We're going to recover and contest everything tightly. But he didn't want to be there. Like, you talk about the fearlessness of the rest of this squad. Like if you put Marcus Smart's fearlessness inside of James Harden, that might be a top 10 player of all time. It's hard to know, but he could not be more dissimilar to someone like Marcus Smart, who gets to every loose ball, does every ounce of talent being squeezed out in game 6s and game 7s is not something that James Harden did. The fact that he was able to summon up 2 elite games, and going back to what Joe said before about this team, it's like, oh yeah, the Celtics have this in them. It's just for whatever reason, it doesn't turn up every single night for 48 minutes consistently. But this Sixers team was one of the best offenses in the league, and they held them to under 90 for 3 games in the series. So the elite defense is there, but I think it's also coupled with them Harden puking on himself.
Yeah. The James Harden and the Sixers shitting the bed has happened that often and is that predictable. You have to attribute it to being some sort of real force in the universe. But anyway, for me, I
just attribute it to being a character flaw.
Yes.
The question is huge. Bad humans.
Huge character flaw for a basketball player.
I'm attributing 99.9% of it to the Celtics defense, namely Joe Mazzulla's defensive adjustments. In other words, putting Time Lord back in the lineup. Because you're right, they were giving Harden a lane to the basket almost all the time. There were points where Al Horford is like running out of the way and just like inviting him to go in. And I'm thinking to myself, what is this? This is not sustainable. If you've got Robert Williams in the paint who can come over and help, then that lane to the basket, it's deceptive. And I think Harden was psyching himself out because he knew that help was coming. He has to always kick it out to a corner shooter. And unless your first quarter PJ Tucker, those they didn't end well for the Sixers. So I think the adjustments just did enough to throw Harden off his game, and it completely nullified Embiid. You know, we probably going to shoot him a lot more this episode, but it's just that I've never seen 2 stars so discombobulated by one adjustment, a significant adjustment at that. But seriously, like they were relying on Tobias Harris, PJ Tucker, Tyrese Maxey to keep them even connected to that game. And, you know, that's not a long play. That's going to get stale real soon. And it did about 2 minutes into the third quarter. So I'm putting this all down to Celtics defense, man.
Yeah. And so the other thing the Celtics defense was doing, and this is something that, you know, much smarter people than me have pointed out already, is they were peel switching. So like Embiid sets the pick, Harden comes off of it, and Jalen comes around and is trailing him. So Rob or whoever is guarding the wing, and the Sixers had actually shifted PJ Tucker up to the wing to put him in a better position to, I guess, catch and shoot the ball. So Rob or whoever's guarding the wing slides into the paint to cut off Harden's drive, and then Jalen peels off to recover back to the wing to cover whoever Rob has left. So in this case, it was PJ Tucker. We saw that late in Game 6 as well, and they were doing that right off the bat in Game 7 here. It was actually, you know, really amazing and really comforting, given all of the difficulty the Celtics have had defending the pick and roll, and like drop coverage has been like a huge detractor when talking about the Celtics defense all year and early in the playoffs against the Hawks. And to see them just come up with a new coverage, and like now that they're doing it, now that they did in the last 2 games and it was so effective, it's like, okay, like where was that? It was so very effective in this particular game against, you know, what has been a league crushing pick and roll tandem, you know, all season. Joe and, you know, I guess his coaching tandem, because we've just learned from last game that all the players are apparently helping him coach and make adjustments as well. They've all come up with this adjustment together. It's clearly worked, and makes me feel good going forward. And then beyond that, because like obviously when you're, shuffling coverages on players in the middle of a pick and roll, players are going to be left open. Their role players were left open. PJ Tucker, we talked about, who started shooting 100% from three. Anthony Melton had some good looks. Their role players just didn't hit shots, and ours did. And particularly our superstar hit a shitload of shots. And that was kind of the game. We just sort of picked our poison. We gambled correctly. Shout out FanDuel. And it worked. And Philly shot 21.6% from three, despite their role players having some pretty decent looks from three with all of the peel coverages that the Celtics were throwing at them.
We got to call that the MVP from now on.
Yeah. MVP.
It works.
Yes.
It does.
I think that just a little sidebar discussion. I think you can get that. You can attack that strategy just by setting the. I wish we had a little piece of paper so we could sort of draw.
Little whiteboard.
We all know what we all know what we're talking about here. But if that extra pass away is 3 feet further, that's a long way extra for Jalen to cover. You know what I mean? Whoever's doing that peeling around, and he's got to sprint over the other side of the floor. And his man's helped off one pass away, which is sort of one of those, as I understand it, sort of one of those defensive principles that you're not supposed to do. You're not supposed to help one pass away. But because Jalen's fast, and if their spacing isn't right, that he's able to cover the distance.
And
but anyway,
with
so
Embiid,
that's just a sidebar.
And I think in this scenario, Embiid, you have to just because he's such a force that just he's a magnet for defenses more than other teams are. But is this the market efficiency that the Celtics have figured out, that you utilize the knowledge of the players internally, that it's a collaborative coaching effort? It's not just one man making the moves. And would there be any team in the NBA more perfectly suited to have player coaches than the Boston Celtics? I don't know.
Other than whichever team Kyrie's on.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah. Coaching not required.
Player, I don't know what you would even call him. Player figurehead, player shaman.
Player shaman. That seems
player
right.
chaplain.
Yeah.
Give that a go.
Any other thoughts on the Celtics defense before we're going to take a break in a second for a sponsor read, and then we're going to get to Tatum's epic performance? Any other defensive takeaways?
I do. I think you guys are totally right. When you're watching the game, and Embiid is so vulnerable to double teams, he's just not a prairie animal. He needs that. He needs I was just at the zoo, the other day, and he needs the eyes on the side of his head. He doesn't have them. He's too predator.
Most people don't.
He's too predator.
Yeah, Jokic is a prairie animal, which is a word I've just learned today. Yeah. Jokic is like two prairie animals combined. In Embiid, it's so funny because he's gotten better at it, but the Celtics are just so much better than anyone else. Partly just because, one, they have the personnel, but they've just had so many more reps dealing with Embiid. And I feel like there's a PTSD element for Embiid because you go back to rookie year, the bubble year in the playoffs. We play each other
3 times now.
3 times, 3-0. We play each other 4 times every single year. It's just good. It's just good practice. It's good training.
Yeah. Not to mention Al Horford practiced against him every day for a year. So I think he just knows his shit inside out. Hey.
Yes, I'm sure we're going to have a specific Al Horford segment, so we can, we can move on. Yeah.
It's coming.
I just have one other thing I want to add.
Yes.
This is apropos of nothing, perhaps. But my favorite observation of Ben's is that Marcus Smart he's a magician. And
Maestro.
James Harden, well, you talk about him having magic,
Sure.
and James Harden has no magic. He hasn't. You think about it. He has no verve. He has no magic. There's just nothing about him that's special. There's nothing about him that he's just kind of a robot that sometimes works. He's sort of a malfunctioning box making machine in a factory.
Loophole exploiting machine. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, and he's smart as an artist and a painter, and he paints outside the lines. And all Harden can do is make boxes, and then sometimes he breaks down and he doesn't make boxes.
Yeah, he's
but
a bureaucrat.
Either way, he sucks.
He's like a welfare officer, Centrelink officer, whatever.
Yeah.
Whatever. Yeah. He's like, I
Lives
can't
in
break
an
the
old
rules.
Kafkaesque nightmare, James Harden.
I'm trying to find loopholes in the Constitution, and I'm looking to the ref, and if the government doesn't save me, then I'm homeless, and that's where he's at right now.
James Harden's a bureaucrat.
Yeah.
Can only live within like brutalism architecture and just like grey Soviet style buildings, whereas like Marcus Smart has Jackson Pollocks all over his like warehouse converted apartment.
He's got green hair, man. Of course he is.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, before we move on to Jayson Tatum's masterclass, we're just going to take a break and hear a very quick word from our sponsor. Make a fast break to FanDuel during the NBA playoffs because right now, new customers can get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's $1,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. I love using FanDuel. FanDuel have the Celtics at 7.5-point favorites heading into Game 1 of Celtics Heat, and I think I'm going to sit down before the game and eke out a spicy same-game parlay. FanDuel also have great promotions every day, a safe and secure app, and you get paid instantly. There's no better place to bet all the playoff action than America's #1 sportsbook. Visit FanDuel.com/Boston and get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's FanDuel.com/Boston. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. 21 plus in select states. First online real money wager only. $10 deposit required. Refund issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire in 14 days. Restrictions apply. See full terms at FanDuel.com/sportsbook. FanDuel is offering online sports wagering in Kansas under an agreement with Kansas Star Casino LLC. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit FanDuel.com/RG in Colorado, Iowa, Michigan, New Jersey, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Illinois, Tennessee, or Virginia. Call 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT-STEP to 53342 in Arizona. Call 1-888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org/chat in Connecticut. Call 1-800-9-WITH-IT in Indiana. Call 1-800-522-4700 or visit ksgamblinghelp.com in Kansas. Call 1-877-770-STOP in Louisiana. Gambling Help Online, ma.org or 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support in Massachusetts. Visit www.mdgamblinghelp.org in Maryland. Call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY to 467-369 in New York. Call 1-800-522-4700 in Wyoming or visit www.1800gambler.net in West Virginia. All right, we're back. Philly had a 9-point lead at one point during a particularly butt-clenching stretch of the second quarter. I want to, I guess, give some credit to the Sixers, first of all, for taking us to 7 games. Their defense early in the game, the Celtics could not score. They could not score. We went down 9. Tatum checks back into the game with 9 minutes left in the second, and then immediately gets to the line. And then Harden up for a layup. Jaylen applies the rule of verticality, gets up, contests it. It goes out of bounds. Harden comes down, elbows on Jaylen Brown, a la Al Horford, elbows down on Giannis almost precisely a year ago. That's with 8:26 left in the second. And this is right after Jaylen had removed the mask. There's a flagrant call, cue a 7-0 run, and we go into the half up 3. Early in the third quarter, tied 55-55 with 11:30 left in the third. That third quarter, the Celtics just generating the purest of clean looks while just ruining Embiid's life. The Celtics go on a 25-3 run, and this seems like the right time to segue to talk about Tatum's game. Joe, like, there was a lot going on. We've talked about the defense. We've talked about like turning points just now. Talk to us about Tatum's game. I know you have been, I don't want to call you a Tatum detractor, but you've been one to like sort of continually pull us down to earth whenever we kind of get like swept up in the magic, to apply that term to Tatum as well. What are your thoughts on this performance from Tatum, and how does that sort of shift the narrative about Tatum and his ceiling as a Celtic and as a player in the NBA?
I mean, I guess I'll always have concerns about his level of variance as an offensive player. But the fact of the matter is, like, the tiniest handful of players have had a performance like this under this sort of pressure. Mm-hmm. Like, it's just runs on the board, man, in a major way. And it's part of the record. It's a major data point. And, like, between that and the bounce back in the last couple of minutes of Game 6, And also you think about Game 6 in Milwaukee, he's got some stuff on his resume, Like, it's not like he's no James Harden, that's for sure.
The
God,
anti-bureaucrat.
He
Not
showed
a
it
bureaucrat.
man.
Not a bureaucrat.
He's not a bureaucrat, man. He's no bureaucrat.
Something just to say to if we were just to do a snap consensus poll of like Tatum's best games, you're gonna say the 46 against the Bucks at Game 6. You're gonna say maybe the 60 against the Spurs, his career high, and a Celtics
I'm
career
not a
high.
big fan of that one. Like, I know it's
Well,
his
'cause it
highest
was-
scoring game.
Because we were
It was the
down so
Spurs,
much
and
enough.
we were atrocious for most of that game, and it was literally just Tatum putting us on his back. But neither of those games were in front of a full TD Garden. This was the first time you really got the playoff masterpiece in front of a full crowd where the chips were down and it mattered. And I think if you couple that with the absolute abyss of darkness and reputational Armageddon that he was facing, was 4 minutes away from had we lost Game 6, to go from that to where we are right now, it's honestly, it's astonishing. It really is. I believed in Tatum for the longest time. I know we all have, but I was just in awe of today's game. Like and the most exciting thing is, and almost probably the most concerning thing is, it's not over yet. Like we're literally the halfway point of what would be the ultimate goal. So, man, I choose to believe it's just going to get even better from here. But like, he needed that game to be in front of the fans to like really like, I don't know, just elevate himself, just that microcosm up. We always thought he was like, it's probably consensus that he's a top 6-7 player. The last 5 quarters, I don't know if what it does to like his, the standings or whatever, but man, it's just superb, just absolutely superb from Jayson Tatum.
He's so unique. We're always trying to compare and with who he was. Is he like Kobe? Like I've been using recently the like Andre Kirilenko AK-47, but like the superstar version. Like he was a good role player who made like one all-star team, but was really good at like stuffing the box score. And my favorite version of Tatum is when he's doing everything. And like Game 6 against Atlanta, he's got 30 points, 14 rebounds, 5 assists, 3 blocks, 1 steal, no turnovers. And today, when he's going inside out, he only took 3 3-pointers in the first half. And I feel like there are performances like Milwaukee is different for a few ways. One, it was a lot of threes. It was more threes, and also the game ended up being closer. That point about TD Garden is really good, Jackson. I really like that. Like this is for sure the first time, because one of my favorite Tatum performances that's kind of lost was round 1 against the Nets when Jalen was out. Rob had like played half this. Like it was Shemi Ojale and Tristan Thompson and Daniel Tice. Like this roster that's sometimes held against Tatum is on his resume when you literally 80% of the roster is out of the NBA. But he goes toe-to-toe with KD, Kyrie, and Harden, who were destroying everyone. And the next round, they were ripping the Bucks apart. And if Kyrie and Harden don't get injured, they win that series. And Tatum looks all 3 of those dudes in the eye and drops 50 in TD Garden. But it was the first day fans came back, and it was only like 5,000 fans from memory. And then Game 4 was like the full TD Garden. So for everybody to have this performance, I said before you hopped on, Joe, that like from time to time, Jayson Tatum can turn into Dion Waiters, but from time to time, like there's no really comparison. Like I was trying to look up stats. I was going through Kobe Bryant's basketball reference, Paul George's basketball reference, Kawhi's basketball reference. He's very unique in the way that he rebounds the ball, the defense. Like it's not quite on Kawhi's level, but it's better than some of these other guys, better than Paul George's. He doesn't shrink like Paul George. Some of the efficiency stuff, though, similar to Kobe. So like he's this mismatch of like these big wings and different guys throughout history. But and then you add the element of him being the leader of this team at such a young age, which, people get mad for saying there's such a young age thing, but this is really rare for a 25-year-old. Like Kobe was doing it at a younger age, but he had Shaquille O'Neal, top 10 player all time in his prime. And for like Tatum to be the best guy on the team and doing this kind of stuff, like there's going to be hiccups along the way. Like this doesn't happen. And so like you get a day like today and I mean, it's just transcendent. The vibes just wash over you. Like
It's a historic game. Like it's a historic performance.
Literally the most points ever in a game 7,
Yeah.
ever in all game 7s. Amazing.
Forever?
And then, but like, I just want to be clear, like getting to the line early, playing with intent, and trying to do away with the I guess the sort of more recently developed narrative about Tatum and his slow starts in the playoffs thus far. And we've all seen it. And I think, Joe, you've talked about it. Correct me if I'm wrong, but like just the way he bounces the ball, you can tell like there's an intent in his game just with like the ferocity that he's bouncing the ball. He was doing that in this game. Playing with intent, going hard. He got absolutely wiped out by Embiid going to the bucket at one point later in the game, but drew contact, got to the line. He had a just before the free throw line pull up midi in the second quarter over Melton, which was like shades of rookie season Jayson Tatum. Like that's kind of like in the playoffs, particularly. That's where he, as far as his skill set, actually, in terms of his development as a younger player, likes to get his shots and like can be quite efficient from. It was good to see him get a shot from the mid range in this particular game. In the final minute of the first half, strips Embiid, steals the ball.
Yeah,
comes down the other end, in and out dribble, sidestep 3 to go up 3, going into halftime. Amazing shot, and then to start the second half, doesn't settle for the 3. Gets to the rim, finishes with his left. Next play, gets to the rim. He's met by Embiid. He relocates to the corner. Embiid, tired already at this point, 7 games into the series, doesn't get out to him. Tatum splashes the 3. Then a 3-point barrage in the third, including the quote, "This is my shit" 3 to go up 15.
Can we clarify this? Because there's buzzing around. This is my shit. This is my city. I think it's this is my shit.
This is my shit.
Yeah.
I think what Jimmy Butler was saying when he had his 54 or whatever the other day. This is my shit. I'm certain of it. Yeah.
And then the Sixers, they start doubling him. And like that's like just feeding into what Tatum knows and loves, because that's how he's been buttering his bread, because he hasn't been able to shoot so far this series. They start doubling him. He's like, well, now I'm just going to go back into what I've been doing to be impactful thus far, which is pass out of these doubles. And at that point, midway through the third, it was fucking over. And then as well, double bigs means 2 guys on the court setting really fucking solid screens for Tatum, which I think actually really helps to open him up and helps to get him like downhill. So I think double bigs is actually, you talk about the spacing of 5 out and all of that, but double bigs with Rob and Al, as long as someone like Al is playing the 4 who can, be one of the 2 bigs, but also space the floor and shoot as an elite shooter, as we know him to be, then that version of double bigs, I'm not saying anything new because they literally got to the finals last year in 6 games, is really, really helpful. And it really helps Tatum with 2 elite bigs setting picks and rolling. It helps him get to where he needs to go. So that adjustment from Joe Mazzulla in game 6 was really, really helpful. And we've seen Tatum come alive as a result of that. So Tatum's game was great, but there's been some adjustments around that to help him get to that point as well. What else from Tatum's game have we not covered yet, guys?
Get in there, Jackson.
Did I just cover all of it? I'm sorry, I went on a bit of a rant.
Get in there, Jackson. How are your plums feeling in the midst of that third quarter explosion?
Oh man, I felt it all in my plums. Tell you what, I don't want to like harp back onto like the darkness that was after game 6, but like I was like, I got to put my shoes away, the JT ones that I know Ben, you have a pair. I've also got a pair. I almost put them away. Got a little Tatum doll I was going to put away. I got
a pair.
For a 34-year-old, soon to be 35-year-old man, I fanboy way too hard for a 25-year-old dude that I'll probably never meet. But man, it's just incredible.
I think something about the game from Tatum is he wasn't bringing the ball up the floor a lot. Like Smart was setting the tempo, and I think that's something that we need. We need Smart pushing the tempo. We need the bigs out there because we've just played so much more forcefully. Even when we were behind, like we started, like that flagrant really kind of kicked it off. But we were playing fast and forced and hard, and or is it hard and forced? Sorry, Richie. Oh, I seem to have got my order there.
This is going to resonate so well with
Confusing
the
the Americans.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
no.
All of the cricket
no.
announcers that they really know well.
Excuse me, fellas, I'm getting a full Greedy here. I really felt that Tatum really sealed himself in and played in the V early, and it's good cricket to play inside the V early on, and then you start to play the more expensive strokes later on in the innings, and we saw that in full effect here, and in the third quarter.
That's well done there, Jacques Tatum.
He rocked onto the back foot, and he really crashed a few through the covers there.
You might call it a captain's knock.
It was a captain's knock, but you know what I mean. But like he played he established himself. He got in the paint, and then then you can start to play those fancy strokes.
Yeah, I like to translate the fancy strokes are, I guess, the step back threes.
Yeah,
And you get
when he's in his bag, so to say.
exactly, yeah. But yeah, that's what we loved about this game, and what I think we call for all the time. It's like inside out. We even saw a couple mid ranges. Like he's got it all in there. He's got it all in there. It doesn't all have to be rim and threes. Like a couple of floaters, mid ranges. Just see what's happening. He wasn't like predetermined. He was in artist mode. He was in flow mode. He gets Joel on him, and he's like going to the rim, but then he can kind of feel that he's not going to get this one up, and so he drags Joel back to that perimeter, and that's when he hits the step back three, or then he attacks again and moves the ball, and then it gets fancy. Then he starts swinging for six, going for the sweeps.
Yeah, big slog sweep over the covers.
Exactly right.
Yeah,
not over the covers, over cow
Deep
corner.
belly.
You can't sweep it over the covers. Whoa.
Well, you never know. If you get particularly fancy, you can
Reverse
reverse
sweep over the covers.
sweep it.
over the covers. Yeah. Anyway, we'll map cricketing terms to basketball terms during the off season. So
That's a
if
great
this is
call,
confusing now to American listeners, just like subscribe because we'll make sense of it all during the off season. The Embiid and Harden absolute no show. Who wants to take this? Because it's a thing, right? And we've kind of touched on it a little bit, but it requires further emphasis, I think. So who wants this?
Someone else go. I'll jump in after.
Okay.
I think I opened the show with some slander, so I think Joe, this is yours.
Up your wheelhouse,
Joe is
I got
literally
a
licking his
couple.
lips right
I got
now.
a couple things. The first thing, I'm workshopping a little thing live on the pod here, but I had this thought. The Pearl Jam song at the end of that they play at the end of Friends. They play at the end of a lot of their concerts. Yellow Lead Better.
I know the one at the beginning of Bill Simmons.
That's what I was gonna say. That's where I thought you were going. I was like, that's the only Pearl Jam song.
Yellow. Well, I'm like Harden, man. He's yellow bedwetter. That's who he is, man. He just it's just all the time. Like it just is him now. He is that guy. And then on Embiid, who I've always kind of sort of okay. So I'm a kind of known relative skeptic of Tatum, right? But I was sitting there thinking, would I trade Jayson Tatum for the current NBA MVP Joel Embiid? And no, absolutely not. Like he's better. He's better than the MVP. And I don't think he's the best player in the NBA, but he's better than the MVP. And it's a very, very small list. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think, man, it's Embiid's, Jason's, the game he had, like so few players have had, right? Like Paul George has never had a game like this. Kawhi Leonard's never even had a game like this, right? There's not a lot of guys to compare it against, but so sort of this has had the effect of vaulting Tatum, but Embiid, you got to drop him in your estimations, man. Like, dude just doesn't get it done. He just doesn't get it done, man. And,
I've always been,
he's had his chances.
I've always been pretty anti Embiid when it comes to playoff success. The type of player that he is, you spoke about it, Joe, like whatever the opposite of the prairie animal is, that's what he is. And when you get to the playoffs and you're this type of player that needs the ball fed to you in certain spots, like he's so incredible that he can get the ball on the perimeter and go here and there, but he's not like Tatum that can initiate, take it from all spots of the court and dominate. You get into the durability aspect. You can talk about how freak these things are all you want, but like literally it's every single year there's some kind of injury that he's dealing with. There's a conditioning aspect of it as well, where he fades. How many games this series did he fade? And again, he's at the injury, but he looks like he's dead in the first quarter of half of these games. And Tatum looks like he's barely broken a sweat in the middle of dropping 42 points in the third quarter. And it's just like, oh, he's not done. He can play 2 full games. He'll play 80 minutes. It's not a problem for Tatum.
Yeah. And I think probably one of the most damning things as well, too. You might disagree with this, but I think Philly's best game of the whole series, game 1, where he didn't play. So make of that what you will.
Spicy indeed, Jackson.
Yeah. And like in this game, 7 games into a second round series, Horford was like a predator leading a stampede in transition, going up and down the court. Like there were slow motion things where they were focusing on like players in the background, and then as part of that, like that camera angle in the foreground, you'd see Horford like leaning forward like a raptor in pursuit, like just gunning down the court. This is late in the game. Horford was like just a gun up and down the court, and like that has to have an effect on it. I mean, it clearly does have an effect on Embiid, particularly the later you get into the series there. But the stats on Embiid, and I've got them here somewhere. Embiid and Harden 9 points on 3 of 11 shooting, 5 turnovers. Embiid, I don't have his points here. I don't know why I don't, but 5 of 8 shooting, 4 turnovers.
16, I think.
5 of 18, dude.
5 of 18. And then some are saying, Doc was saying in the post game, and I think Bill Simmons said he had like, quote, multiple sources in the building during the game, that something happened when Embiid like fell down onto Marcus Smart, like just lying on the ground.
And got a foul for it.
Yeah, that was called a foul.
Yeah.
And then I guess he like tweaked his knee on just like the hard, rugged abs of Marcus Smart, and that was it. But I mean, it's not like things were going particularly well up until that point for the Sixers. So just a massive shit show for both of them. Sorry,
one bit as well, right, is that Embiid wants the glory of the MVP. Like they have been campaigning, and he has been campaigning for this MVP, and like some idiot Boston sports radio people have been saying that Tatum's all about himself and all about these individual accolades. That's just kind of made up. Like he cares about winning more than anybody else. He's just not the type of guy that like is that emotive all the time. He kind of saves it for big stuff. This not too high, not too low kind of stuff like is really important, and it can be frustrating at times because you want him to give you more, but he does save it for these moments. So Embiid today, like you got to watch the full clip to really get the full context, because it's not as bad as some of the clips going around are, but he throws the team under the bus again. And it happened in the middle of the series about people playing better. He did it again today. He threw Ben Simmons under the bus. Was it last year? It's hard to keep all of their losses and all of their
deservedly so that time.
Bus throwing, yeah, deservedly so. But like Tatum's never thrown anyone under the bus. I mean, obviously he should have thrown himself under the bus after the finals, but like, you know, this is not what these guys these guys do. Like after game 3 of the Hawks series, he said, I get a lot of credit when we win and I take the blame when we lose. Like he's very aware that when things are going well, people are going to bow down. But he's also very aware that if he had not rallied in game 6, it would have been an evisceration that we may not have seen. Well, we're kind of seeing now with him being Harden. Something similar to that. But like he's aware, man. Like he's a leader. He's willing to take he's put it on me. I'll take the blame.
And think about like, okay, so I can't help but think about this in comparison to Jokic, right? Like, okay, so Jokic is obviously a very poor defender in space, particularly, and blah, 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 blah. But I guarantee Jokic's teammates feel 10 times more confidence as a result of being Jokic's teammate than Embiid's teammates do. And that really flipping matters, man, at the tippy top end of things. Like that's leadership, you know? And Tatum, as you said, like he's not hitting it, like not throwing your teammates under the bus is sort of like, you know, that's a good that's like the entry level part of doing it, right?
Yeah.
You know, and Embiid can't do that, man. Like it's not an accident that role players fall over when their leaders don't give them confidence. They can see him wilting and they know, I've got to make this shot or we're going to go down big, you know? Whereas when the leaders lead, the role players can play a little freer.
Yeah. Tatum has read like the first chapter of the Kama Sutra, and then on the other side of that, on both sides, Embiid is like he's never seen or heard of the book, and then Jokic is just like this all-giving like expert lover who just pleasures everyone at all times.
Embiid's the kind of guy to just skip right to the end and be like, "Oh, here's the important part. This is what I got to do," ignoring everything that comes before it.
Yeah.
This is the point.
Now we need to zip into some
Jokic,
individual
Kama Sutra guru.
Yeah, that's right. We need to zip into some individual performances. We're going to get to some misc notes, and then we're going to wrap up. And our series preview pod with regards to the Heat is coming up in a day or two's time. So individual performances. I want to lead with Al Horford, who hit just enough threes in this game. He had a big three with 20 seconds left in the first quarter to cut it to 6, and just to start to draw out Philly's defense. Then hit another one midway through the second. Might have been his only other three. Maybe he hit one more in the game, but it was just enough to keep the Phillies defense, the Sixers defense rather, honest in this particular game. And then his 1v1 defense on Embiid was like particularly on display, all through the series, but particularly in this game. And like you've probably got to give the 1v1 matchup to Horford, right? As far as how this obviously helps that the Celtics won, but diminishing the league's MVP. He's 36 years old. He's kind of locking down Embiid for, at least for stretches, for meaningful stretches for various games throughout this series. And then like sprinting, like I said, up and down the court on offense, in transition defense, just incredible. And then 3 blocks in this game to punctuate that performance. So would you say that Jackson, that Horford won like the 1v1 matchup against Embiid in this series?
Oh, absolutely. Look at Embiid's season average of points and shooting splits compared to the playoffs. And granted, he wasn't there for the first 4 games of the playoffs, but Philly didn't lose a game against the Nets, and we gave them, and they struck out against us. Just real quick on Horford though, there was a moment in the fourth quarter when Horford was completely free under the rim, and the alley-oop was on, and it would have caused an earthquake in Boston. And Jaylen Brown, for some reason, just pegs it right at Harden's face, and like 26-point lead. I was irate. I was like, that's just that would be the cherry on the top, of this stomping, just to get a big, loud Al Horford flex oop, and it didn't happen. And I was very upset about that. But it was the only thing I was upset about, because Al Horford was immaculate today.
Okay, I got a stat for you now. Defensive tracking stuff can be weird, but Embiid took 18 shots. Horford was the primary defender on 16 of them. Embiid was 3 for 16 with Horford as the primary defender in Game 7. Look at that, John Zennis pies.
Yeah, shot John Zennis.
Amazing.
Some particle,
John Zennis.
Amazing timing.
This is why we love the people in the chat joining us, and just the supplementary stats and comments are fantastic. So thank you.
You guys are the real MVP.
Like, that's just big time, dude. Al Horford, like, didn't shoot the ball well, and then in the quotes today, he's just, I'm fighting for my life, man. Fighting for my life. And that's what I love about this Celtics team. John Zennis Pies and Jake are mind melding at this point in the playoffs. And that's where we're at. That's where we're at right now. We're mind melding. We got smart Jaylen mind melding, but Horford was fighting for his life, and that's what this team does, dude. Like, it's not going to look pretty all the time. Al Horford went 0 for 7 in a game, but like hit the 2 big threes today, and you just keep scrapping and scrapping and scrapping and scrapping, and you might not win, but if you keep scrapping, you give yourself a chance. And on the other end, Embiid and Harden don't have that gear. They don't have the I'm going to scrap till I die. I'm going to scrap until it's over.
They're just not competitive enough.
No, they're not.
They're just not. Like,
I appreciate you, John Zennis Pies.
Go ahead, Joe.
Well, no, I was just like, because that was one of the things I was thinking about with Tatum. I was just like if nothing else, like maybe I've underrated his competitiveness. Like you have to be so competitive to do what he did at the end of Game 6. I mean, what he did at the end of Game 6 is honestly more impressive, actually. Like chips are down at that point, and he just came through, man. Good for him, man. I'm happy he's on my team.
Jaylen Brown. Well, because we're going to get to some misc notes, so we're already massively over time, so we're gonna rush through these other individual.
Jackson's got to watch Succession. We got to get out of here.
Exactly. I've got to watch Succession too, man. My wife is waiting for me.
You
Jaylen
motherfuckers
Brown.
spoil it in the comments. I swear to God, I'm gonna find where you live. Anyway, I love you otherwise.
I'm going to find where you live, and I might think about booking an airfare, but I probably won't.
Yeah, you're stern talking to.
Jaylen Brown, best supporting actor in a dramatic role. 25 points, 6 rebounds, 2 steals, 2 blocks, 2 assists, 4 for 4 from the free throw line. We were not in our playback stream. We were not there to talk about TV shows like Succession or Pokemon or anything else to help him will his free throws in, and yet he made them all. Jaylen Brown, Jake, I would call this sort of the perfect supplementary performance to go next to Tatum's 51 points. What are your thoughts about Jaylen in this one?
Just like Avenger vibes. We had Thor going to work, putting in he saved the world. If you're going to assign a saving the world award, it was going to Tatum. But Jaylen turns up it wasn't a Batman Robin thing. I'm not doing a Kendrick Perkins thing. It was like he was an Iron Man. He was just perfect, picking his spots, and in classic Jaylen fashion, and coming out in the first quarter, setting the tone, this energy, calling out the crowd after Game 6. Loved it. I think it worked. I think and he tweets afterwards, the energy shifted. It's all connected. Jaylen gets it. You tweet it out. You put the vibes into the universe, and you know what? He and then guess who's the one who gets popped in the face, blood running down his face? Who's the one who gets the breakaway steal to set the crowd into a frenzy? It's Jaylen. Tatum was obviously insane, but Jaylen had a few plays that were Tommy Point, put him on the hype reel, kind of old school Celtic vibes. There was a moment where Tatum was just going off, and you see Tatum going. I forget how many Tatum highlights it was. I think it was just the wow one. Tatum was just surprised at himself, and then Jaylen comes across the screen. And he's just laughing with the front row. He picked his spots well. He didn't try and. This is what's great about these guys. He didn't try and be like, "Oh, Tatum's going off. I gotta go off too." He was just, I'm going to pick my spots. I'm going to let the energy find me. But right now, this is Tatum's night. And he understands when Tatum's going like that, just let me be Iron Man. Let me be Hulk. Let me just do my thing. I can just be a different superhero tonight. And I love that about him.
If I'm honest, it wasn't actually my favorite Jaylen game. But the game turned around. The game turned around when he got hit in the chops, right? And he got that flagrant, and he really played aggressively after that. 100%. The game turned then. And Tatum, I don't actually think was in the game at that point, and that's when it turned. So I'll give Jaylen huge credit for that, and I'll give him huge credit for what you're saying, Jake, that he did not try and keep up with the Joneses. He just played he played a role, with a couple of turnovers that I didn't love, but
my favorite,
all good, man. Everything is all good. Everything is all good right now.
My favorite thing about Jaylen Brown's performance is he scored just the right amount of points to make the total between himself and Jayson Tatum 76 points.
Yeah.
He was in a little longer than he should have been. I wonder if that was a little maniacal Joe, just trying to get a little crazy. Just go ahead and get us 2 more. Go ahead and get us 2 more so we can get the 76 points against the 76ers.
The Jays and Justin Champagny combined for a wild 78 points, which was amazing in this game.
Technically, another J, the third J.
There you go. Yeah, the Jays. Right on. Marcus Smart, 3 of 7 shooting, just a nice, I think 7 shot attempts for Smart is really nice coming off the back of his incredible Game 6, that he has the ability to sort of to use the Homer Simpson fading back into the hedges meme, just recede back into kind of what we need him to be when we need him to be that, and to not get an ego about his incredible game in Game 6, and to continue firing away and asserting himself, and just really sitting back and giving the game what it needed. And in this particular game, it was like setting Jayson Tatum up to be successful, which he did regularly. And you look at the box score, and it doesn't necessarily champion Marcus Smart, but a lot of what he did for the Jays in this game was like hockey assists and screens and things like that set them up to be successful that don't necessarily pop up on the box score. The Time Lord, Robert Williams, I talked about having an additional solid screener on the court, which I think is like a sidebar to the defensive impact that's sort of more noticeable. Really active and impactful despite the box score, roaming on defense, screening and diving offensively. I just think is Jackson, I'll ask you this because I know you've got to drop off the call in a second. Is Time Lord like back in the starting lineup full time? Because it kind of feels like we've sort of refound some money with that.
Yeah, I don't see any way back from that whatsoever. For me, this whole series turned with the defensive adjustment of bringing Rob Williams into the starting lineup, and obviously that's an offensive adjustment to some degree as well too. But it just feels like we're tapping back into the same energy and the same roles that we had in last year's playoffs. And even though we haven't really been rolling with that all year, you can tell in the guys, it was ingrained deeply enough that they feel comfortable with each other. And for Rob Williams to like look the way he does look, when he first came back, that was not Rob Williams. That was a dude who was, it was like a horse learning to walk or like relearning to walk. Again, it just didn't have the same vibe. And I don't think he's 100% yet, but we are getting enough from him now for him to be pretty much to do what he needs to do. And like, he was looking for his shot a lot early in this game. And I had mixed feelings about it, but at the same time, now we can sit here, on the other side, the right side of a 30-point win. I was like, yeah, absolutely. Because I mean, I won't talk about the Heat, but we're going to need that, against Cody Zeller and shit, next round. So for me, he's back. He's not quite 100%, but he's doing what he needs to.
He looked good. The aggressiveness, Jackson, as you said, like was maybe the most aggressive I've ever seen him in, like catching balls in the under the rim or like 5 to 6 feet away and just going straight up. And it didn't always work. There was like I'm so glad you're finally doing this, but like just take it down like 12%. Just simmer it. We're at a 10. We're at a 10. I need you at like a 7. But in a game 7, give me a 10 over a 7. Like I much prefer the mentality of the aggression than the other way around because you can't pass up shots. And he had this one play. He had one play where someone dropped it off. Well, Tatum had the awesome alley-oop, but there was like, Rob was cutting baseline. He caught it still ground bound, and he had to fly right at the rim, dunk. Another one, driving down the lane through the middle, caught it, and then launched himself right at the backboard and beat Embiid to the corner of the square, and it laid it in. And that kind of stuff we just have not seen from Rob very often. So it was wild to see someone you don't see at all or have never seen in a game like this. But I thought he was great, and I think it bodes really well.
He looked lefty layup. Did it sound like he slapped the backboard at the same time?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Did you hear that?
Yeah. He looks better than he did in the playoffs last year, obviously, because he's like technically healthy. He obviously doesn't look quite as good as like prime Time Lord, but somewhere in between, which is awesome. And we've just lost Jackson, who's left to go and watch Succession, which I cannot blame him, and I'll be right behind him there. So thanks for joining us, Jackson. He looks somewhere in between where he was last year in the playoffs and like peak Time Lord. And to see him utilized in the way that he has been in later in the series is, I guess, bodes really well just as far as our depth going forward. So that's really exciting. Malcolm Brogdon, a +20. Derrick White, a -8. Jake, you're the world's leading expert on Derrick White, and we've got Brogsy out here with a +20 in this one compared to that -8 for Derrick White. Like, let me ask it to you this way, because this is more relevant going forward. Do you think Derrick White is going to be more relevant in a series against the Heat than he has been, where he's been completely irrelevant almost against the Sixers?
He has to be. They gotta find Derrick. Derrick has to find himself. We got to recapture the magic of the mistress in the next couple of days here. And what And this happens in the playoffs. Like you can lose a guy for a couple games, and if you get out of it, it's like a reset. It's like, ooh, relief. We're through. Season
I feel
starts
that.
again. Yeah, season starts again on Thursday. We got a new team, new film. We got guys like Max Strus and Kevin Love and a bunch of guys that he can take advantage of. I thought that he was really hesitant getting into the paint, and that's a lot to do with Embiid. Bam's still really good. He did struggle against the Heat at times last season, but this is a fresh start. But the fact that he only played 12 minutes is obviously like not ideal. Yeah, what do we need to do? Like Derek, is it a hairline issue? John Zannis Pies here. Like as someone who's not far behind you when it comes to the hairline, like Chuck's bald, Shaq's bald. Maybe that's what we need. Let's just
Come
Come
on
home.
home, Derrick White.
yeah,
Come on home.
solidarity. We'll shave our heads and we'll get D White
Hashtag
back on play.
Manscaped.
Yeah, and I feel like Thomas Myers, like his minutes been getting cut, and sometimes it feels like the more he plays, the better he plays. But what has been frustrating about Derek is that, like, yes, look, the shots sometimes aren't going to go in, but what we love about Derek is that he makes plays in every facet of the game. And and it's a different team, obviously. Like, you're not going to be blocking Embiid at the rim, and these types of guys like Trae Young and DeJounte are the focal point of the Hawks, system. So you're going to see more of Derrick White involved, but I don't remember a single charge that Derrick White took. I don't remember, like there was one or two Derrick White blocks, like just getting hands in spots. Like I think his confidence was definitely impacted across all facets of the game. So it's like, just get back to doing you, Derek. You do everything well. Just get back to that, man. I believe in you.
Now, I'd love to keep talking about Derrick White and Malcolm Brogdon, but we're over an hour. We've got to wrap up. We're going to run through our miscellaneous notes in true rapid fire fashion. And Joe, I'll start with you. Who was the MVP of this series?
Wow. I mean, you got to go with Tatum. Yeah.
Yeah.
When it mattered the most, he was the biggest. He had the biggest swinging dick out there.
Yeah. Yeah. Jake, any way to contest that, or do you want to move on?
It's tough. It's definitely tough to argue against Tatum. I feel like Marcus for game 6, I feel like he was pretty consistent through this series as well. Like just pretty rock solid. And then honorable mention to Al as well, man. He was fighting for his life. And he won. He kept his life. He's still alive, baby. Still alive. Second team, Derrick White defense. You're right, Thomas Myers. Like Brogsy, look, Joe had some moments, but you're not an MVP candidate.
Mm-hmm.
Like Tatum, Marcus, and Al feels disrespectful to Jalen as well. But I feel like we lost Jalen for a couple games there at times.
Yeah. Flashes of like Jaylen Brown elite defense on James Harden, but I guess you got to give it to Tatum just for like having the biggest balls and the biggest moments. But Al Horford just like diminishing the league MVP at his age throughout a 7-game series is like that. It's hard to ignore.
I know we're going rapid fire, but like this is what this team is. They're not driven by a Joel Embiid like MVP just on their own. They are a definition of a team. Tatum, disaster class. Marcus steps up. Jaylen Brown, huge first quarter. Al Horford hits 5 from 7 from 3 to bring home a big win in game 3. Like, so many guys in this team can step up. Malcolm Brogdon goes for 20 points. Pushes a lead out from 4 to 17. Bang. Like, there's just so many guys on this team that can step up at different times, which just makes it difficult to hand out an MVP, I think, on this team. Because I think even going back to last series, like the MVP can kind of go to a couple different guys. And so I would expect more of the same going forward.
I would love to hear just from people in the chat and people listening to the podcast later. Like, I'm trying to wrap us up quickly because we're over an hour. Like, what are your thoughts on like? Do we just like? Do you want the 2-hour, 3-hour like Joe Rogan Celtics podcast, or like
to guzzle the Celtics content at this point?
Yeah, it just seems crazy to run it over an hour, and yet like we can't resist. We can't keep ourselves under 1 hour, even if it's like after a game 3 loss in a first round series. We can't help ourselves. That said, continual rapid fire here. Joe, did Brogdon and Rob learn to play together in the later stages of this series?
I mean, I'm going to have some selective memory. For me, nah. Brogsy does his own thing, man.
Yeah. I'm with you, Joe.
There was
I think
science. There was science. Little moments of connective tissue between the two.
there was definitely signs, but I think there was also a lot of like, Rob was wide open. Why did you not just pass it to him under the rim? But maybe Ben. Maybe it's there.
Hope springs eternal, Ben.
Yeah.
Hope springs eternal.
Great. Happy to move on.
He's a bucket getter.
The Niang leg grab, have you ever seen anything like it, Jake? Do you think he should have been tossed? Do you think that was the moment where the basketball gods decided to award the series to the Celtics?
How was that not an ejection? That was absurd.
A brain fart. It was a brain
They
fart.
reviewed it as well.
Yeah.
It's like,
I've seen stuff like that heaps of times before, just like not in basketball.
yeah, definitely not a
different
basketball.
sport.
Especially to review it and be like, he don't want to intent, whatever, grabs his bloody leg and just is ridiculous. Could not that Niang was swinging the series. I don't think he even played much after that anyway. Like, but yeah, it should have been an ejection.
Joe, and I want to ask this to Philly fans, I guess, but via you, was the MVP worth it for Joel Embiid, given that he flamed out in the postseason once again? Like, does the MVP award mean more to Embiid and the Philly fans than like postseason success, given where
it's
they've
even
been?
worse. It's a millstone around his neck now. It's going to be it's going to be like Dirk winning in 07 and getting knocked out in the first round, but worse because at least Dirk's redeemed himself 4 years later, whereas there seems to be no hope for Embiid. At least Dirk had at least had some moments, you know.
Embiid is now the only player in NBA history to have won an MVP and not get out of the second round. The only one.
Yeah. Wild
That's
stuff.
rough.
Couple of other notes here. The Jays and Smart Eastern Conference Finals appearances needs to be shouted out, just given their relative young age. So it's the 5th for Smart and Jalen, 5th Eastern Conference Finals appearance, the 4th for Tatum in their short careers. Just amazing stuff. It's just a quick note to sort of pause and appreciate their success and their continued playoff success so far in their young tenures with the Celtics. And then to end on this, Game 6, like we kind of have to talk about this, right? Like just the absolute miracle that it was that the Celtics came away with that game. And big shout outs to Marcus Smart. Like I almost awarded him the MVP of the season just because to win that game and to go in and maestro the team through that game and come up with a victory somehow. And then conversely, the Sixers, like you could just never not think about that for the rest of your life as a Sixers fan. Like you were right there, you had it, you were up. Everyone who works for the Celtics or is on the beat for the Celtics talked about how ridiculously loud that crowd was. Like the stage was absolutely set. From the broadcast, it felt like ESPN were like tilting towards the Sixers narrative. It just felt like everything from all angles was all Sixers winning that game. And then somehow, like just against all odds, Tatum comes alive, hopefully stays alive like that heading into the Heat series, but that's for another podcast. Just ridiculous. And Jake and Spoonie, the podcast that you guys did, which is a little bit evergreen just in terms of like capturing the essence of a moment in time. If you haven't listened to that and you're listening to this podcast, go back and listen to that podcast because you did a great job of capturing the moment, but you were also just kind of like, what the fuck? Like what happened? How did we win that game? And you weren't necessarily able to answer that question at the time, which I think is completely reasonable. I can't stop thinking about Game 6. Even though we've just seen this glorious Game 7, like, am I alone in that, or are you guys kind of hinging on that too?
Look, you know, the script, simulation, whatever, I kind of feel like we had a bit of plot armor in that moment. And the Sixers just have the opposite of plot armor. Like, this is the reality of it. And it's, you know, my pop always says, like, the harder you work, the luckier you get.
Couple lazy dudes, man. Couple
what I
of
don't know,
lazy
man.
dudes.
Like I know Embiid works hard, but like Harden goes to Vegas in
Does
between
he?
the Harden's in Vegas in between series and stuff like that. Like Embiid's always gassed. There's just this like, what are you doing? Element to those guys, and with Smart and Tatum and Jalen, like they're just not. They always get better. Like Smart's maxed out whatever he could be. Like he's going to be a below average shooter, but he's also going to be like the best shooter in the league in like 2 to 4 playoff games every year. They have played so many playoff games. I think Tatum was up to 85 or something. Like Smart just played his 101st playoffs game. He's 29, dude. It's crazy.
It's a lot of experience.
Like the first conference finals they played was against LeBron, which was LeBron's last year in the Eastern Conference, if I'm not mistaken, which was the end of his like 10-year run as like the Eastern Conference like overlord. This is the 5th conference finals for. Is it for the 5th of like Jalen and Marcus?
Yep.
Or is it like? But like these boys have been running the East for 5 years. Since Tatum's been a rookie, man. Like if you're playing in the Eastern Conference, the Celtics have kicked your ass over and over and over again.
Yeah, I think, and it's that perspective that kind of informs this one for me, which is I keep coming back to this, which is if the Celtics win the whole thing, they'll kind of probably win it going away, and it'll seem inevitable. Oh, we were the best team the whole time, and we were. The good Celtics are the best team in the NBA. It just depends. Will the bad Celtics cost them enough? Because like this is what's devastating for Philadelphia. The bad Celtics beat the good Celtics twice.
Yeah.
Right? Philadelphia only beat us once. This whole series, they only beat us once. We had to beat them 6 times out of 7, and we did it, you know? That would be depressing for me as a Sixers fan.
Yeah. Massively.
So you know, like the Heat series, I mean, far out, it could be a sweep.
Well, this is good, Joe.
Sweep or a 7-game, just like
in either direction.
That's where. So before the playoffs started, and maybe this is a good place to end, Ben. And like we won't do a full Heat preview because we'll say that for the next pod. But like before the playoffs started, it felt like the Celtics and Heat were on a crash course collision course for the round 1. And Joe was the Heat are trouble, and I was like the Heat are frauds and washed and all this kind of stuff. Joe's been proven right, I would say. But if the Celtics win in 4 or 5, it's like that's still very much in play to me.
Yeah,
like, you're 100% right. I feel like they could win in 4 or 5, or they could win in 7. It wouldn't shock me either way.
Vindication may be available for you, Jake. If the Celtics win in a sweep or a gentleman's sweep, you know, you can say, hey, we had nothing to worry about this whole time.
Yeah, it's up in the air. It's up in the air, which is great. Well, look, the Celtics, they have reminded us of what we already know, which is that they look like title favorites when they play the right way. They're deep enough that they can stay alive in a given series when Tatum isn't on his game, but when Tatum and the defense both come alive simultaneously, they're extremely difficult to beat. And now it's the Miami Heat in the conference finals, who we thought we were relieved to have avoided back in the first round. But here they are, lying in wait. Let's leave it there. That'll do it for this one. We'll be back with the full conference finals preview pod in the next couple of days, potentially with a very special guest. In the meantime, Control-Alt-Delete, process killed. Jackson, Jake, Joe, love your work, guys. Until next time, go Celtics.